Hey everybody, welcome back for another sublimation tutorial. Today we're going to look at how we can print larger than 8.5 by 11 with the DTF Sublimation Hack. If you have a standard printer that doesn't print any larger than that size, you can split your image and make it fit and make it a larger image. I did a more in-detailed video a while back with the app that I use to do that. I'll link that up above and in the descriptions for you. But that was just with standard sublimation. This video is going to be towards the DTF Sublimation Hack and how to get through the steps of that. So as you can see, I did make a little one. That was just the width of the paper, no larger than 8.5. But I did do a larger one with this step-by-step method. And you can see the large difference in scale. It's definitely larger than the 8.5. And I believe it's still close to an 11, but you can make it even larger if you'd like to. If you haven't seen the full tutorial on the DTF Sublimation Hack, I'll link that up above and again in the descriptions, so you can go back and check that out before we get started with this. I did want to show real quick, because a lot of people have been asking what the texture of the DTF Sublimation Hack is. And this is just a cotton material. It's just a cutout square, but you can see how floppy it is, how thin it is. If you actually feel it, it feels like a super thin piece of vinyl. It's very malleable, it moves with the shirt. It's not heavy at all. And also, I did do some washes with some other shirts that I had done. I ran it through cold cycles, inside out, and then through the tumbler, the dryer. I did that 3 times and it actually held up really well. Very little color loss or cracking. So it's actually working super well. So I'll go ahead and show you the materials that I use, and then we'll move into doing the step-by-step method to make a larger image. All right, so these are the materials I generally use for the DTF Sublimation Hack. I really like using the Yamation film and also the powder adhesive. I will link down below in the descriptions where you can get it, and there's also discount codes as well for both the film and the powder. You'll need some kind of cutting tool, and I like to use a ruler, and I'll show you how to do that later on in a different step. And you also need some heat press. I have my little Cricut as always, but you can also use your clamshell press or whatever works best for you. You will also want some parchment paper. I like to use parchment paper, but you can use butcher's paper as well. Again, it's preference, whatever works for you, works for you. Parchment paper works for me and it works great. You'll need some kind of cutting board just to be able to cut on, and that way you're not cutting your table or anything else. And then for the printing, you can just use your standard sublimation printer and sublimation ink. That's what this method is for. It's for sublimation. It's not for DTF printing, so you don't need to go out and buy the super expensive DTF printer or the ink. This is just a hack, so you can use what you already have. For us sublimators, it works really, really well, and it gets you to use more options versus polyester. You can use 100% cotton t-shirts, which is what we all want, because you know, the polyester all the time, it's not working. A lot of people don't like the feel of it, so it just gives us more variety of the materials we can use. So let's go ahead and jump into the steps of getting our image sized, cut out, and pressed. All right, so here we are in the Inkscape app. If you haven't downloaded it, it's spelled right here for you, and it's associated with this icon here. It does have different versions for Mac and HP, so whatever you need, it does have different ones so that you can go ahead and use what's going to work with your computer. I also did in the past do a dedicated video towards how to print the poster size images in the past, so if you haven't checked that out yet, I'll link it right up here for you. And then I'll also put the link down in the description so you can check that out to see how that more in detail we do that. So for this image here, you can see this is kind of generally just the size of the image, but I would like to make it bigger. So what we're going to do is split the image, and we're going to just go ahead and remember that this box here is the size of the paper that you're going to be printing on. So this is your template for what you're printing on. So if you make sure it's in the box, it's going to print in the box. It'll print properly. If you have it set off to the side like this, half your image is going to get cut off, so be aware of that. But this is where it comes in handy so that you can do those split images and do a larger printout format. And with that, you'll just go ahead and drag your image outside of the box. And yes, it will cut off part of your image, but that's what we're wanting it to do. I usually use a little white border line around because it doesn't print a full page. So if you have it too close to the border, it will cut off part of your image. So just be aware of that. All right, so from here, you want to go ahead and go over to this square tool. You're going to make a couple of squares. You're going to just go ahead and make one just the size of this image. Just kind of block that out. And again, have a little white border right there where my little cursor is. You just, again, want to make sure it's not going to get cut off when it's printing. And we're going to go ahead and leave that there. And then you're going to go over and duplicate it because we do want 2 of them. And this one's just going to go right next to it, just like that. So your image should pretty much be covered up right now. And that's what we want. You will go ahead and make the little blocks white because if you have a different color, it's going to actually print out that color, and we don't want it to print anything except for the image. I do have mine a little bit on the translucent side, so with that you can go over to the fill and stroke and just adjust it, move the levels up so it's 100% opaque, so it's not seeing through. This one you'll do the same, but this one we do want it to be see-through just to start with. So we'll go ahead and just completely get rid of it. Or you can just move it off to the side for now, whichever works best for you. I just make my opacity completely 0, and that way it's completely see-through. So at this point, you can see half our image is cut off and hidden on to this side right here under that square that we just made. That's what we're wanting. So we'll go ahead and get this first page printed out, and then we'll move on to the next step to show you how to print the other side. So to print, you just go up to File, and you'll go to your Print button. And I have my sublimation printer already set up with my preferences. There's also a tutorial on how I have my print settings set up. I'll also link that up top and then in the descriptions for you to take a look at. I do like to change it to portrait size just for this portion. And we'll go ahead and OK. And we'll print that from there. Now what we're going to do, we made that box translucent so it's see-through, and why I don't like to move it is just because I don't want to have to reline it up. It's already in place. You just go over here and change the translucency level all the way to 100%, and that way it's again shadowing out your image, and your image is covered up again completely. And then we'll go ahead and now we're going to do this one, and we're going to make it 100% translucent so we can see all the way through it. You're going to highlight all of your image and the squares. And with that, we're just going to drag this over. So now that cutoff part, or the part that hasn't been printed yet, will be in your printed template spot. And that's what's going to print out next. So we'll go ahead and print that out. All right, so we have our images printed out. As you can see, there's 2 different pieces of film here. Just be careful at this point because the ink is really wet as it just sits on top of the film, so it's really easy to smudge it if you're not careful. At this point, we're going to go ahead and put our adhesive powder onto the image, get it cured onto there, and then we'll move on to the next step of how to get it cut in the process. I'll quickly kind of just go through the curing process with the powder. If you haven't seen the full DTF Sublimation Hack video, I will also link that up top and in the descriptions, go ahead and check that out. That way it's more in depth and in detail for you. And then we'll go ahead and move to the next step of how to get it cut. All right, so as always, I just have a little piece of paper to protect everything so the powder doesn't go everywhere. And then you can also reuse your powder as well. We'll go ahead and sprinkle this on. All right, so now that we have the powder coated, we're going to go ahead and cure it, and then we'll move on to the next step. All right, so we have those cured. You can test it. You can kind of run your finger over, and now it's not going to smear because it does have that layer of cured adhesive powder over it. So now it's more protected. So what we're going to do next is cut our image and piece it together. For this, you just need a cutting tool. I like to use a ruler and a cutting mat. So these are the three things that I use when I'm cutting my image, and I'll go ahead and show you how I do that. All right, so when you're doing this, what you're gonna do is make sure they're on the right side first, and that's the proper way it's gonna line up. You can see this is where my lines will line up here. And I'm gonna go ahead and do the smaller image cutting because the bigger one, it's already set for the most part. It'll be easier to piece the smaller half together with the larger piece. So we'll go ahead and do that. I like to line up my ruler to the very edge of the color and cut the edge off. So we'll go ahead and do that. All right, so you can see I have my edge cut off, and you can also see like it's not smearing because it has that cured layer on top of it, so you're not messing your image up. So that's the nice thing about printing it out and then curing it. That is where you're going to be able to actually manipulate and do the cuts that you need to do. And then from there, you're just going to line up your image, and then we'll tape it together with heat resistant tape. One thing I also did want to explain, I don't like to cut this edge off because once you've cured it, you can kind of feel that lip that's there from the image. And if you put your cut image on top of that overlapped piece and just kind of scoot it in, it lines up just perfectly as it already needs to be because it kind of butts up right against the other half of the image. So just like that, and then make sure it's just lined up where it needs to be. I won't turn it over quite yet. I'll put 2 pieces of tape right here, that way it's secured. Don't put the tape on your image because then that piece of image won't transfer over. So I'm gonna reline this up now that I moved it, and then I'll go ahead and tape it. All right, so we have that taped. There's just one there and then one up here at the top. At this point, real gently peel the tape off if it's taped. Mine's taped to the mat here, so I don't want to pull it up and pull everything apart. So let's carefully lift it up, and we will very gently turn it over. Make sure you're not scratching any of the adhesive off or disaligning your image. And then we're just gonna put some more tape marks right here, and that way it's securely taped together. All right, so we have our image taped together. I'm just gonna fold this half back, just like that. That way it's just on there. All right, so now that you guys have your image taped together, I like to go ahead and do my second layer of powder. You can do this before you tape it together. It really doesn't matter as long as it gets done. Sometimes I do it before it's taped, sometimes after. Just kind of depends how I do it that day. Again, you just want to do a light coat. Doesn't have to be super heavy, just enough to recover it. and that makes sure that any spots that might have been missing are getting covered this time. So it's taped together and it has its second coat of powder on there. No, you don't need to reheat it. I just go ahead and press it after this step. All right, so I have my piece of cotton fabric just to show you the press-on process. It's on top of my heat mat and parchment paper just to protect my heat mat, which clearly sometimes I forget to do, but it just helps to protect it when you actually do. From there, we're gonna go ahead and take our taped together piece of paper, our image, and we're gonna turn it over to where it's gonna be. If it comes apart, like you can kind of see where mine's apart a little bit, just make sure it's taped back down and that the image is still correctly in place. As long as you have these two initial tapes in place, you'll be okay, because those are what primarily held them together. So we'll just make sure that's centered where it needs to be, wherever you want to place it. And that's how that's gonna look right now. You have your larger image placed to your smaller image is taped together, and we'll go ahead and heat it. When you do heat it, 325 to 350 for about 10 to 15 seconds seems to work the best. But if your press runs hotter, your temperature and time might be a little bit different. All right, so I'm just gonna do a couple of tape down pieces just to keep it in place, just like that. And that way, when I lift, because I have my smaller press, it won't move the image. If you have a clamshell press, it won't matter because your whole image will be covered. All right, so we have our press set at 320 for 10 seconds. When you do it, make sure there's good pressure being applied for that 10 seconds. And if you're doing in sections, it's the same exact thing in each section. So I'll go ahead and get mine pressed. And then I like to go over and just make sure if there's any spots that look like they might need to be repressed just a little bit, you can do that. You can put parchment paper over if you want, or you can just press directly over it. To me, it doesn't really seem to matter, but from this point, once you have it pressed, you do want to completely let it cool down. It's not a hot peel, it's a cold peel, and that means completely cooled off. So we'll go ahead and let this cool off, and then we'll peel it and check out the results. All right, you guys, so it's completely cooled off. There's no heat to it. So we're gonna go ahead and peel our image off. I did want to show you a cool thing. It might have been cool to me. I turned it over just to see and actually had a see-through image. So like anything else, when I say if it bled through, it's probably gonna get a pretty good result. So I just wanted to show that. We'll flip it back over and we'll go ahead and peel it off. You do want to be gentle. Don't just rip it off. Just kind of real gently peel it back. All right, you guys, so there's the final result. That was the cutting and taping with the DTF Sublimation Hack. It does come out really well. It does take a little bit longer, a little bit more patience and time, but you can do it. It does work. It actually turns out really well. So you can do those bigger images if you need to. I'll go ahead and link in the descriptions all the tutorials regarding the DTF Sublimation Hack. They're a little bit more in detail. I just wanted to go over how this process would work with splitting your image with this process. Again, works really well. There's not going to be any issues. Just take your time with it and it works great. If you guys enjoyed this tutorial, go ahead and boop that like button, subscribe to the channel, share for others so they can get helped as well, and have a wonderful day and happy crafting.